my opinion, parents should not let their kids watch Pokemon, play Pokemon.
Especially with the great speed and perfect timing with which these handlers do it. So we...
Who's that Pokemon? It's It's Bulbasaur!
Hey guys, I'm Eric, and I hope you enjoyed that intro. I really wanted to do something Halloween themed, so I decided to do a spooky Bulbasaur. I don't know where the original concept comes from. If you Google Halloween Bulbasaur, there's like a million of them. I wanted to do my own twist, and I had a lot of fun making this. Originally, I was going to do this as just a time lapse at the end of the last video as a way to show different ways you can create geometry. However, as I was working on it, I started to have a lot of fun, and I wanted to break it out into his own video. So we're going to run through the time lapse. I'll chime in here or there, talking a little bit about my process. Other than that, we're just going to sit back and enjoy. So why don't we go ahead and get to it? So like I said in the intro, I wanted to try to use as many different ways to create geometry as I could to make this little guy. So you'll see me using masks to extract. You'll see me just using primitives to block out his legs or his body, stuff like that. I didn't use every technique in that video before, but I tried to use as many as I could. Like originally I was going to use these spheres for the vines. However, I ended up not doing that. And also later in the video, I tried to use a shadow box to do a witch hat on top of the pumpkin. It just wasn't really working for me. I ended up going a different route. This kind of evolved as I was working on it. I knew that I wanted to do a spooky Bulbasaur, and I sort of had a final image in mind. I kind of just let his proportions and the way he was coming out dictate what I wanted to do with him. As I kind of started blocking him out, I realized I really wanted him to have a really big head and be really squat. You might be able to tell in this time lapse, his proportions really only end up working for the final shot. Like if this was going to be a toy or a figure, I definitely have to rework it a little bit to fit, to look okay from every angle. But for the purposes of what we were doing, it worked just fine. My workflow was pretty straightforward. You know, I went ahead and just blocked everything out with primitives. I dynameshed it. I zero-meshed it to be as low as possible, and then just tried to sculpt as cleanly as I could and very lightly smooth. So kind of that loop of building up the forms, smoothing it out, building up the forms a little bit, smoothing it out, and just repeating that until it kind of felt clean. To do the jack-o'-lantern, went ahead and hollowed the top out so that I could give it thickness. There's other ways to do thickness, but this was just the easiest way. And then I used booleans to punch out the face, which I think worked pretty well. The eyes were a bit of an experiment. I wasn't sure if I was going to do any shaders or anything, so I modeled in the little highlight at first. And then once I got into Toolbag and I started rendering it, I realized I wanted to do glossy eyes, so I ended up not using that little piece there. And I'd say probably half the time was spent just working on the pose and kind of tweaking what I wanted to do for the final shot. So really trying to get his head tilted and get his body in there and all that sort of stuff. And also just trying to figure out how to fit that pumpkin on his back, because as you can see, his body was so small. And I really wanted the pumpkin to be big and exaggerated, so I had to figure out how to make it work for the shot. And you'll see on his left side, the pumpkin doesn't really sit right, but it works well on the right side, and the right side was the side that was facing the camera. So that's what I focused on. For the vines, I ended up making a simple cylinder IMM curve brush and then just drawing curves out to get the rough shape of the vines. And then I used my move brush and just moved them around into position. I really worked on making them curve in a way that worked well for the camera, because I wanted to kind of have them frame him in the final shot. So that's why you see me pushing them around and trying different shapes and stuff. At this point, I'm mostly just finalizing his face and, you know, some of the little proportions and stuff. He had those really round eyes in the beginning, but once I got him in the pose, I realized he looked kind of empty, so I just kind of gave a slight angle to his eyes to make him look a little aggressive and a little feisty. Here's where I was talking about trying to do the witch hat with Shadowbox, which just wasn't working, so I ended up just kind of using a cylinder, masking it, and going that route, which was much easier. For the final render setup, I kept it pretty simple. He's just using poly paint, and I have a skybox, and I just have 3 lights in the scene with some fog. And that's pretty much the entire scenes. Nothing crazy there, but ended up working just fine for what I was going for. And that about wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed the creation of this spooky Bulbasaur. I had a lot of fun making it. Maybe I'll try to do 1 or 2 spooky Halloween things if there's time. I hope this inspires you to do something Halloween themed. And if you have requests for future videos or anything like that, please leave a comment. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Happy Halloween, and I'll see you next time.
Pikachu, go!